Welcome to this deep dive on crisis-driven debt traps and how to manage them. First, we will outline a real-world case study where a severe pest infestation spiraled into a $15,000 burden. Then, we will unpack hidden costs, employment contract risks, the dangers of debt reshuffling, and a practical stabilization plan. By the end, you will have an actionable framework to regain control during chaos. Let's begin. Here is the agenda. First, we will analyze the case study and hidden costs. Next, we will discuss safety considerations and safer alternatives. After that, we will examine employment contracts and clawbacks. Then, we will address the common debt delusion. Moving on, we will walk through a 90-day stabilization plan. Subsequently, we will cover practical tactics for housing, transport, and work. Finally, we will test your knowledge and summarize the key takeaways. Before we proceed, a critical disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. It is not financial, legal, medical, or pest control advice. For pest control, consult qualified professionals and research product safety. For medical concerns, consult your healthcare provider. For employment contracts and clawbacks, seek legal counsel. For debt and budgeting, consider consulting a fiduciary financial planner. Now with that context, let's move forward. Let's ground this topic with a real case. A severe infestation led to emergency moving, housing loss, replacing large amounts of personal property, specialized moving logistics, and medical bills from chemical exposure. The total accumulation reached $15,000. Moreover, the stress and time lost disrupted work and stability, compounding financial strain. With that in mind, we will now map the hidden costs that frequently blindside people during such crises. Hidden costs appear quickly in crisis situations. Property may need to be discarded and replaced. Temporary housing can be necessary while remediation occurs. Specialized moving or disposal services might be required to avoid cross-contamination. Medical consultations may be needed following chemical exposure. Lost work time reduces income during a critical period. Finally, high-interest credit often fills gaps, creating a debt spiral. Now that we see the full picture, let's quantify a sample cost breakdown to understand how the total can reach $15,000. Here's a sample cost breakdown. Temporary housing for 2 to 3 weeks is estimated at $2,500. Property replacement is estimated at $4,200. Specialized moving and disposal are estimated at $1,800. Medical visits and tests are estimated at $1,000. Lost wages amount to approximately $2,000. Debt interest and fees over several months could add about $1,500. Extermination and follow-up treatments are estimated at $2,000. Combined, these costs approach $15,000. Next, we will discuss safety considerations and alternatives to harsh chemicals. Let's compare conventional chemical approaches to mechanical alternatives. Chemical sprays can be effective, but carry toxicity and sensitization risks, require careful ventilation and re-entry intervals, and may necessitate recurring treatments and medical follow-ups. In contrast, mechanical approaches like careful application of diatomaceous earth, heat and steam treatments, mattress encasements, bed interceptors, laundry protocols, and integrated pest management reduce systemic toxicity risk when properly applied. Nevertheless, consult licensed professionals and product labels to ensure safety. With safety addressed, we will now examine employment contracts and how instability can trigger costly clawbacks. Bonuses and incentives frequently include clawback provisions. A change in role, early exit, or performance disruption, even when caused by external crises, can trigger immediate repayment. Therefore, it is crucial to review every clause before signing and to budget as if a bonus might need to be repaid. If a clawback is triggered, communicate early with finance, or HAR, to negotiate a repayment plan. Next, let's address a common error that amplifies long-term debt: using education funding to plug short-term holes. A frequent mistake is using educational loans to pay off consumer debt or employer clawbacks. This converts short-term pain into a long-term obligation with compound interest. Programs like public service loan forgiveness and income-based repayment do not eliminate new consumer debt balances. The prudent approach is to pause degree pursuits until physical, mental, and financial health are stable. In the short term, prioritize income generation and expense reduction. With that mindset, let's move into a concrete, time-bound stabilization plan. This flowchart begins with an external crisis, such as a severe infestation. From there, costs branch into emergency move, temporary housing, property replacement, medical checks, and work disruption. These collectively lead to a cash shortfall, which often funnels people toward high-interest credit and, consequently, a debt spiral. The diagram also shows a recovery off-ramp, from cash shortfall to expense reduction, into a structured stabilization plan, and onward to deliberate debt paydown. Now let's translate that into a 90-day playbook. Here is a structured 90-day stabilization plan. In the first week, freeze discretionary spending and cancel non-essential subscriptions. In days 1 through 10, reduce housing costs by seeking roommates or relocating to a lower-cost unit, targeting rent under $1,000. In days 1 through 14, negotiate clawbacks and any delinquent accounts proactively. Between days 7 and 21, optimize transportation by ending leases and moving to low-cost alternatives where feasible. Between days 7 and 30, build a micro-emergency buffer of $300 to $500. From days 15 to 60, pursue overtime, side shifts, or temporary work to boost income. From days 30 to 90, use the debt avalanche method to attack the highest interest balances. Throughout, document crisis-related expenses for potential tax or assistance eligibility. Next, we will visualize this timeline. This timeline shows the progression from immediate actions in Week 1 to debt paydown by Week 5 through 13. Week 1 emphasizes a spending freeze and cancellations. Week 2 focuses on securing cheaper housing or roommates. Week 3 highlights negotiating clawbacks and debts, with transport optimization around weeks 3 to 4. By Week 4, build a small emergency buffer. Weeks 3 through 8 focus on income boosts. Finally, from weeks 5 through 13, concentrate on avalanche-style debt reduction. Now, let's test your understanding with a quick quiz. Quiz time. Which action typically delivers the largest immediate monthly savings during crisis recovery? Option A, upgrading to a new degree program. Option B, reducing housing costs via roommates or a cheaper unit. Option C, taking out an additional student loan. Option D, leasing a newer car. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B, reducing housing costs via roommates or a cheaper unit. Housing is typically the largest single expense, and lowering it below $1,000 often creates the most significant immediate cash flow relief, enabling faster debt repayment. Next, we will dive into specific tactics to drop housing costs safely and quickly. To reduce housing costs, target rent below $1,000 by sharing a place or relocating to a more affordable neighborhood. Seek leases with flexible terms to preserve options during recovery. If pests were involved, use mattress encasements and interceptors, and confirm building treatment protocols. Choose locations near work or public transit to reduce commuting costs. Document moving and crisis-related expenses, which may help in securing assistance programs. Now, let's address transportation decisions. Transportation is the next lever. Exit or avoid costly leases when possible. Consider public transit, carpooling, or biking to reduce recurring costs. If a vehicle is essential, prioritize a reliable used car over a lease to minimize monthly obligations. Reshop insurance and adjust deductibles thoughtfully to balance risk and savings. Finally, consolidate errands to cut fuel and maintenance expenses. With housing and transport optimized, let's shore up income stability. Staying in a sustainable role reduces volatility and protects against clawbacks. If a clawback has been triggered, open dialogue early with human resources or finance to arrange a reasonable repayment plan. Add overtime or temporary shifts to increase short-term cash flow. Delay large purchases and avoid lifestyle inflation during recovery. Track weekly progress to maintain motivation and accountability. Next, we will visualize how people slide into debt spirals and how to reroute towards stabilization. This sequence diagram contrasts two paths. In the first path, the person encounters a crisis, incurs costs, and plugs the gap with high-interest credit, which leads to a cycle of minimum payments and growing fees. In the alternative path, the person slashes housing and transport costs, increases income with overtime or side shifts, builds a small emergency buffer, and then applies avalanche payments to high-interest debt. The second path leads to stabilization. Before we wrap, let's do one more quick quiz. Second quiz. True or false? Using new student loan funds to pay off high-interest credit cards is a smart short-term fix during a crisis. Option A is true. Option B is false. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B, false. Using new student loans to cover consumer debt transforms short-term pain into long-term, compounding obligations. The recommended approach is to prioritize immediate income generation and expense reduction instead of layering on additional educational debt. Next, let's capture the key points you should remember. Here are the key takeaways. First, map hidden costs early to avoid blind spots. Second, reduce housing costs first, targeting rent under $1,000. Third, exit costly transportation leases and shift to low-cost options. Fourth, do not use student loans to cover consumer debt. Fifth, stabilize your employment situation and negotiate clawbacks promptly if needed. Sixth, build a small emergency buffer and then use the avalanche method to reduce high-interest debt. Finally, document all crisis-related expenses for potential assistance or tax relief. Now let's summarize the entire video and close with a call to action. Here is a concise, Markdown-style checklist. It includes immediate actions such as freezing discretionary spending, securing safer and cheaper housing options, and negotiating clawbacks. Safety notes remind you to research mechanical pest control methods, follow product labels, and consult licensed professionals, including medical providers. Money moves include building a small emergency buffer, applying the avalanche method to high-interest debts, and tracking weekly metrics like cash flow, balances, and due dates. Finally, we will wrap up with a brief summary. In summary, external crises can escalate rapidly into five-figure burdens if unmanaged. Prioritize safety and consider lower toxicity approaches with professional guidance. Review employment contracts to understand potential clawbacks. Avoid reshuffling debt using student loans. Instead, stabilize with housing cost reductions, transportation savings, and steady income. Use a structured 90-day plan, a small buffer, and the avalanche method to drive recovery. To close, here is one more visual of the overall cost distribution. This pie chart illustrates a plausible distribution of costs, property replacement as the largest portion, followed by temporary housing, extermination, lost wages, specialized moving, interest and fees, and medical expenses. Your actual distribution may vary, but visualizing the breakdown helps target the biggest levers for savings and prevention. Now, let's end with a call to action. Thank you for watching. If this video helped, please like it, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe for more content on crisis-proof finances. Tell us in the comments which tactic you will implement first and what topics you want next.